I'm Bill Karow. If you don't know me already, I'm a club member of Northwest Woodturners, and I also do their newsletter. So today I wanted to talk about a few different techniques you can use, simple techniques that can really enhance the look of your wood turning. And here are some examples of bleached wood pieces that I've done. I've enhanced a lot of it. I find it's really kind of an interesting look to have kind of white on white with some wood carving here, as well as some kind of scalloped pieces. And here's another one that I used a power carver to kind of go to the with the grains. I just sort of outlined the grains of the wood. And what's really dramatic is this is raw wood, and then this is what it looks like bleached. So this is not a great differentiation, but a difference in it. But this is maple, and maple's pretty light anyway. So these were just maybe 3 or 4 coats of the solution onto that. And to kind of give you a much more dramatic view of this, this is a piece of cherry. This is what it looked like before, and this is what it looked like bleached. And you can see the bottom still has the raw cherry color on it. So it's just a nice nice way to enhance your wood, to make it almost look like porcelain or ceramic. So I'll talk about where to source the chemicals, as well as how to prepare it to actually coat the wood. I found that some woods will take the bleach a lot better than others, and really the ones that do take the bleach well are woods that have high content of tannin in them. So I've had good success bleaching oak, red and white, also maple, madrone, box elder, and cherry as well. Cherry works really nicely. Now I'll talk about how do I source the chemicals and how to mix it up to bleach the wood. Also, I put together a document, and I'll put that up on the Northwest Woodturners website as a resource as to where to find the chemicals, as well as how I apply it, as well as all of the safety precautions that need to be taken. So that's up on the website. So this is what I use as part A and part B when you mix them together. You always keep them separate until you're ready to start bleaching. And again, I want to just stress that both of these are caustic. They can cause chemical burns, so I really recommend using face mask, goggles or safety glasses, as well as rubber gloves, long sleeves, definitely closed shoes and long pants, as well as a respirator. I don't find that the fumes are too bad. It's always good to wear a respirator whenever working with chemicals. So part A is the hydrogen, is the sodium hydroxide. And really what sodium hydroxide is just drain cleaner. This is something that can easily be purchased for a couple bucks at Ace Hardware, and I have a link to all of these as well on the document. So this is super cheap, but it's also super dangerous. So what you do is you take a half cup of cold water and put it into a cup, either plastic or glass, not metal, container. Put the half cup of water in there. Then again, with all of your safety equipment on, take a 1.5 level teaspoons of these lye crystals and slowly pour them in, and then mix it with a spoon or wood or whatever you want to use to mix it up with until all the crystals are dissolved. Then what I like to do is I put it into either a glass container, or I've actually done a larger gallon size, so I've upped that the measurements and ratios so that I have a whole gallon of sodium hydroxide. And it usually, what the measurements were about, it gives you about 8% solution, and I've heard that anything more than that is just overkill. So, and again, it's caustic. Label it caustic. Also put a little skull and crossbones on it if you want. And then, so you have that, and it keeps indefinite. So I've had this for, I don't know how long, a couple years, and it still works fine. So then part B is a high concentration of hydrogen peroxide, and you can't just use the household hydrogen peroxide. It has to be a lot stronger than that. So the one I use is Bakwacil oxidizer from Pool Supply Company here in town. There's also a couple other names, and they're on the document, so if you can't find the Bakwacil, there are a couple other ones as well, so I'm sure you can find that at a pool supply place. And it costs about $25, which is basically what the price of a Daly's wood bleach, part A and part B, 2 pints of it. So you're actually making a heck of a lot more than 2 pints of part A and part B when you do it yourself. So again, this is about 27% hydrogen peroxide. You don't really want to get this on your skin. So again, all the safety equipment is on. And then you mix it up right when you're ready to start bleaching. And it will, usually over time, it will lose its potency. So you want to use it as quickly as you can. Half hour, maybe a little longer. It just begins to get weaker after about a half hour. So what I like to do as well is I like to sand my piece up to 300 or 400 grit, and then mix 2 equal parts of each of these. So when you're ready to mix and bleach, you mix equal parts of the sodium hydroxide and the hydrogen peroxide into a cup, plastic or glass. And what I like to do is I just use my scale to put it on, tear it out, and then equal parts. And you don't need a lot. It's just like, it has a consistency of water, so you're just going to wet the piece that you're using. And again, probably not doing it on a piece of wood. I have pieces of plastic that I use, and once you've coated it, you just let it dry, and then if it is not as bleached as you want it to be, you just you mix another little bit of each of those, and then apply another coat. And I usually find like 3 to 4 coats gets it just about to as far bleached as it can. I think after 4 coats, there are kind of diminishing returns. And then for finishing, after you've bleached and you're happy where it is, you can, if the grain is raised a little bit, because it might be, you can sand it back just lightly with 300 or 400 grit, lightly, because it doesn't go down too far into the wood. Do that, and then wipe it off, and then you can either spray it with a fixative or a spray lacquer, gloss or semi-gloss or matte, whatever you choose. And the other thing you can do that I really like, and that I got from Kevin Jasequel, another member of the club, is after you've bleached it, if you have a Beal buffing system, use the white diamond only and polish it with that, or buff it with that, and it just turns out like porcelain. So that's how you bleach.
So Bill, when you first add the bleach, does that raise the grain, and what do you do about it?
Well, if you haven't already, what I like to do when I'm sanding, usually on most of my pieces, especially if I'm going to have sort of a water finish to it, is I like to raise the grain with either denatured alcohol or water after I've done my kind of final grit sanding, like to 400, say, and let it dry, and that normally pops the grain up, and then I will lightly sand it back with about 600 grit, and I'll do that twice, and then I find that it helps the next time it gets wet. It doesn't raise the grain as much. But if it does raise the grain after you've done all the bleaching, You can lightly go over it with a 600 grit sandpaper and just kind of put that grain back down. You can also burnish it with a paper towel, which I find works really well, and then apply your finish to it after that.
If I want to bleach it several times, how long do I wait between applications?
Well, it really depends on the weather. What I like to do is I like to apply it and then just let it dry and just forget about it until it dries. You know, sometimes it dries in a couple hours, sometimes a day, but just let it have a lot of air circulation and it'll dry quicker.
So I want to try to bleach a bowl. What's the best way to calculate how much solution I need to make up?
Well, usually when you mix equal parts A and B, I treat it sort of like water. How much water will I need to soak the piece once? And you'll be surprised, it's not that much. I usually put in about 20 milliliters of each, so it would make about 40 milliliters for, you know, a normal sized bowl. And that will be enough to sort of just wet it. All you're doing is wetting it and let it soak in, and then let it dry. So because it loses its potency when mixed together over time, I like to use a fresh batch each time I reapply it. So the next finishing technique that I want to go over is called fuming. And what it is you take ammonium hydroxide, a real concentrated version of ammonia, sort of like household ammonia, and putting it into an airtight container with your piece that then allows the fumes of the ammonium hydroxide to permeate into the wood and cause a chemical reaction with the tannins to darken and really enhance the look of the piece. You can get very dramatic differentiation between heartwood and sapwood on things like oak and cherry, and those I find are the best woods to do. I'm sure other woods as well can do it, but again, it's all about the tannin content of those particular species. I would urge you to experiment with just pieces of wood. They don't have to be finished pieces, but try different species and just throw it in. It's pretty inexpensive to do. Again, this is a technique that you can do in your shop, although I would suggest not doing. Actually, I would stress not doing it in your shop because of the fumes. They are very toxic, or very potent, I should say, and it's always good to do in a well-ventilated area, especially with all of the safety gear that you need. And I want to go over that real quick as well. And here are some examples of what fuming can produce in wood. They're pretty dramatic. This is a piece of cherry that has darkened quite a bit. This is a piece of oak, and it's a really nice distinction between the heartwood and the sapwood. I really like how that came about. This is a live edged vessel that is fumed as well. It is oak, and if you can see, there's again nice differentiation between heartwood and sapwood, but everything is it just makes it a lot browner and caramely, and I just love the look of that. And here's another piece, another live edge, and again pretty dramatic with the differentiation between heart and sapwood. I really like this piece. So it's funny. I've heard that where fuming came about was, I think, back in England, 1800s perhaps, maybe 1700s. They used to store their wood in the barns where they kept all their livestock, and they would pull it out after a while and realize that it's turned this beautiful caramel, dark brown, chocolatey, coffee color, and they couldn't figure out why until someone said, well, you know, horse urine has a lot of ammonia in it, and that's what caused the ammonia to react with the tannins. I also wanted to show you what exactly it looks like before and after. This is just a piece of raw oak that has been finished, and then this is from, I believe, the same tree. So that's a pretty dramatic difference between the two, and that's what you can hope to achieve. Here's another piece that, you know, it's nice, but again, the fuming really just brings out this beautiful color. I also wanted to make clear, because we're using such caustic chemical, that this should only be done in an environment that has a lot of open air circulation. So do not use it in your shop. Use it outside in your yard or driveway. And you need to make sure to wear all of the safety equipment that I'll go over. Again, long sleeve, long pants, shoes, not open-toed. I use rubber gloves. I also use a respirator, and this is key. You do not want it in your lungs or nose or eyes. But with the respirator, you need to get these certain cartridges that will filter out ammonia. And they're the pink ones for this type of mask, as well as eye protection these are sort of goggle-like. They seal off my eyes pretty well. One thing that I would recommend not using is a face mask. I tried that once, and the fumes came up into my face and trapped it there, and I did not like that. So no face shield. Goggles or glasses, respirator, gloves, long sleeves. This is the ammonium that I use, ammonium hydroxide that I use. It is about 30%, so it is very strong. If I were to open this lid right now, I would be fumed out of here. You can also, I bought this you can get this at a scientific supply place, a lab supply place. There's one in Tualatin, and I have a link in the document that I'll have on the website as well. And it's a little expensive, but it goes a long way. There's also another thing you can use. I have not used it, but industrial strength ammonia that you can get, I believe, from Ace Hardware, is about 10% ammonia strength. And again, it's strong. You don't want it on your hands, but it's not as caustic as this. So if you want to be a little safer or a little less potentially hazardous, go with the janitorial strength ammonia.
And what's the trade-off when you do that?
The trade-off is it takes a little longer with the janitorial supply, the 10% solution. I find that I've heard that takes at least 3 days, possibly 4, to attain the same color as and richness as, say, 2 days at the most with the 30% ammonium hydroxide. Now I'm going to show you the tub that I use, that I've created to keep the airtight piece in with the ammonia fumes. Making an airtight container to have the process happen is really easy. It's very simple. I just purchased a storage container, and in this storage container I have lined it with some adhesive insulation tape around so it contacts the lid and the rim of the tub to keep it as airtight as possible. I've also cut out a little hole here and foil taped on a piece of plexiglass so that I can actually look in and see just how the pieces, the fuming is progressing. Another option you could have is just buying an inexpensive igloo cooler, which is usually pretty airtight. You just won't have the lid to look through. So what I like to do, again, is I take just a small yogurt cup or dip cup, plastic. I will put in about a half a cup to maybe a cup at the most of the ammonium hydroxide. And again, this is with all of my PPE on. I never do any of this stuff without goggles, respirator, gloves, etc. So I will put this in here. So I will pour it into the container and carefully put it into the cup. And I will take my raw piece of wood and I will put it inside put the lid on, and then I keep it outside underneath cover for about 2 days with the 30% strength solution that I have. I would suggest probably 3 to 4 days with the janitorial strength, the 10%, if you go that route. And then once you are done, again, it is very important if you lift this, when you lift this lid, to have your respirator on, your goggles on, as well as your gloves and long sleeves. So I like to tip it this way, sort of hold my breath just in case, and then I will pull it out, and I will leave, it'll look more like this, and I will leave it out in the air to off gas for a couple days to maybe even a week, depending on how long I've had it in there and how large it is, until you no longer have that kind of ammonia smell to it. And then you can finish it however you'd like. What I love to do is use walnut oil with a little bit of microcrystalline wax. I find it really brings out the richness in it. I let that dry, and then I will either buff it with the Beal buffing system or just a plain buff that then it will polish up the microcrystalline wax. And again, I find it just a wonderful way to augment the piece of wood that you've turned. So that is fuming.
What do you do with the excess leftover solution that you have in there?
Good question. What I normally do is I either put it down the drain because it's drain cleaner, so that will do that, or I'll put it in the toilet and flush it. But I also, again, washing out anything that you've done just to keep kind of dispel all of the ammonia. The third way that I like to embellish or augment my pieces is called ebonizing, and I do it quite a bit. There are 3 different techniques that I'll go through to do it. Each of them has their advantages and disadvantages, and I will tell you which one I recommend the most. First off, I'd like to start with scorching, and that is using fire to create a dark char on the wood. What I like to do is start off in a small area and heat it up as much as I can to kind of give this little crackling effect. And again, on some species of wood, it's sort of unpredictable, and sometimes you will get this type of pattern if you hold it on for long enough, but not long enough that it all burns up. And I really enjoy creating pieces like this. There are 2 different types of fuel that I use. One of them is called propane with a torch, and I like the self-lighting one, only because I don't need to have a match or something to light it with. And then the other one I use is MAP gas, and it burns hotter than the propane. And I find that even though some people prefer the propane, I like the MAP gas just because it burns hotter and can concentrate the heat in small spaces as I go around the piece. Again, scorching is very messy. You basically end up with charcoal on top of your piece, and you need to remove some of that in order to kind of have it stay in one piece and not get black every time you pick up the piece. But it's fun to play with fire, so that's a pro. But in order to do that, again, I want to caution you wearing your protection, safety protection, as well as keeping a fire extinguisher near you at all times, as well as a little spray bottle of water. And I use this while I'm scorching. If the embers are getting too hot in a certain place and it's kind of keeps going and it will kind of eat away the rest of the wood, I will spray on water to kind of keep it from going too far. And I find that just a valuable resource while I'm scorching. I sort of use both of them. I would suggest to start slow while you're scorching, using fire, and just experiment, because different parts of the wood in grain chars at a different rate than the side grain or face grain. And again, it's all about experimentation to achieve the desired effect. You just trial and error is the way to go. Once I've finished doing that, what I like to do is I will take the piece usually outside my shop, because it will get very messy inside, and I will brush with the grain to remove the char. And what happens is it will accentuate and augment the grain, the spring, the summer grain, and then what I do after that is, in order to achieve this differentiation between the wood inside this bowl, which is the natural wood, and the scorching part, is I will scorch the whole thing before I actually have it hollowed out here. So I will keep a tenon on here so that I can remount it onto my chuck, onto my lathe, and then I will core out the inside. So that kind of gives a dramatic rim to the bowl, and then the bowl is kind of the same raw wood color as the outside.
And how do you keep the outside from being black?
Well, I will sometimes, once again, because I have it in the chuck, I can, if any scorch marks happen out here, I can usually turn it back out just by taking off the outside with my gouge. And then when I'm finished with that, normally what I'll do is I'll either use a spray fixative or a spray lacquer to kind of set the char onto the wood so that it doesn't come off when you touch it.
And before you scorch, how much do you sand?
I don't know if it really matters that much. I usually sand up to maybe 300, and I have actually done it just off the tool before to see what it would look like. And to me, I don't think there's much differentiation. I don't think you need to worry too much about scratch marks. A lot of them, the surface scratch marks come out when you scorch it. So. Another way to char wood, if this is too large of a burn pattern, I have found that there is a small butane torch that I believe is used in cooking. I think it's for like burning the tops of creme brulees, desserts, and things. And it's super simple. You just turn it on and it goes. It has a really directed, fine flame. And what I use that for is sometimes if I have rims that this, obviously using a big propane torch like that would char everything, I will go around and just do a small light scorching of the rim before I finish the whole thing. So if I were to try to do this with the smaller piece, it would take forever. That's why I use the propane or the MAP gas. But if you're doing small little pieces, especially if you do a small piece and then continue to carve out the wood, it might be a nice little detail around the rim. So that's just another way to scorch wood. This next option for ebonizing is using a iron acetate solution to react with tannins in the wood. And again, like bleaching, it really depends on the tannin content of the different species of the wood as to which ones will take better, the stain better. And again, I find both of the oaks do beautifully with the iron oxide ebonizing, as well as cherry, and also walnut does as well. important to wear gloves unless you want to have black fingers. And another thing that I like to share is to sand only up to about 220, 240. Because any more than that, you will start sort of burnishing the wood, and that will not allow the liquids to go in and react with the tannins as much. So sand about 220, 240 as best you can. And again, I like to pop the grain, which again is, once I've sanded to about 220, I will wet it with either denatured alcohol or water and let it dry, and then lightly sand with 300, 400, something like that, but just lightly sanding it, not burnishing it. That will help not raise the grain once the liquid is on it. So in order to make the solution, I have used distilled white vinegar, and I've heard actually that the janitorial strength or cleaning vinegar is about 1% higher. I think it's 6% rather than 5% vinegar. Does a better job, and it's quicker to dissolve the steel wool. And what I've done is, normally what I do is I will take the top off of the vinegar, and I will take about a half a clump of steel wool. It doesn't really matter how much, and I'll poke it down into the white clear vinegar, and then I will poke a hole in the top, the plastic lid. And again, either use plastic or glass, not metal. And once I've put the steel wool in and poked a hole, I will take a magnet, just a neodyne magnet, and I will put it underneath so that the steel wool will be attracted to it. If it stays up top like this, it doesn't allow the oxygen from getting in and making the chemical reaction. So it's best to keep the steel wool down at the bottom to be able to have the vinegar dissolve it. If you don't have magnets, you can use a straw or a piece of wood or something that can hold it down in as well, but that's just a little tip.
What's the purpose of the hole in the top?
I think just to allow the off gases. It's not a lot, but it's enough that you should have a way for the gases and air to escape. And then once you have this, just leave it for a week or two, and that will usually be the amount of time it takes for all of or most of the steel wool to dissolve in it, to get it up to that iron acetate solution that you need. Once that's done, what I like to do is I will take the bottle and I will strain it, filter it through either a coffee filter, or what I've found that works really well is at a shoe store, those little booties that if you don't have socks, you can, they're like nylons, you can just stick that over, whatever, and pour it in to strain out all of the steel filings that are still at the bottom of the piece. So then once you have that, put it in a glass or plastic container, and it will stay. The shelf life again is, I don't know if it's indefinite, but I've had this for a really long time, and it still works. So that's the way to make the iron acetate. If you want to enhance the tannins in the wood, in the piece that you're working on, there's another thing that you could do before you add before you apply the iron acetate, and that is making a tea that is rich in tannins. You can use like a cup of water with 4 tea bags, because tea has a lot of tannin in it. But what I found worked really well is powdered bark of a South American tree called the quebracho tree. And what it is just a powder that's used in leather dyeing. And again, it's just, you just put a level teaspoon in with, I don't know, a pint of water, and mix it around and make sure it's all dissolved. Probably warm water would work best. So it's all dissolved. And then I don't make up as much tea as I do the iron oxide, only because I don't think this has as much of a shelf life, or it will start getting moldy. So I use enough that I think I'll need. And again, I bought this 5 years ago for about $10 online, and it's lasted forever. So I will never have to buy any more. And if anyone wants some, I'm more than happy to give you some. So once
is the tea ready to go once you do it?
Once it's done and it's ready to go. Just like making tea with the tea bags. It's ready to do. So once you have your iron acetate solution is ready and strained, and you've mixed up a bit of the tea with the quebracho bark, I like to apply it either with a chip brush, disposable sponge brush. You can even use paper towels, but what I like to use is just a chip brush around you first apply the tea, you soak the whole piece and let it almost dry completely, and then I like to take a different brush. You can't use the same one because it'll just react on the brush. The tannin will react with the acetate, the iron. But what I like to do then is take a different brush, pour this out into a small container, so it doesn't contaminate the whole of the bottle. And then I'll just lightly paint around the whole thing. Again, saturate it as much as you can, and you will instantly see it changing from the normal color to a darker, richer, ebonized color. Sometimes what I like to do in order to not contaminate too much, because I mean, once you've brushed on the tea and then you start brushing on the iron acetate, the brush that you have with the iron acetate will pick up some of that tannin and cause a chemical reaction on the brush itself. So it's a little bit like using a paintbrush on wet paint. You'll get a little bit of transfer onto that. So what I like to do is I put my iron oxide in a spray bottle, and then I just spray the whole piece. I don't worry too much about where it seeping off. I usually have a piece of plastic down below it and a little platform to hold it up, and then I just do that and leave it and let it dry and see how it looks. And if it's not enough, I will begin the process all over again. I'll put more tea on, let it dry, and then put some more iron oxide on it. And this process using iron acetate with the bark again is pretty unpredictable. Again, you have better results with species that have more tannin in them, again, like the oak, the cherries, the walnut. But again, it's unpredictable. Sometimes, even on the same species, you just have a different piece that has different tannin content. You can get a differentiation between heartwood and sapwood, and sometimes it goes just completely black. But I like that you can achieve different levels of stain and ebonizing on the piece, depending on how many times you use the tea. I don't usually use it more than twice, and again, it's always good to experiment with a piece before you put it on your finished piece, just a scrap of wood, and you can immediately see what's going to happen with that. And this, again, the only safety equipment I mentioned before, the only safety equipment you really need for this is gloves, but I always wear shot glasses, safety glasses in the shop, so no harmful fumes to speak of. So that is how to ebonize with iron acetate.
So after you put it on, do you ever get streaks or blotches or anything?
Sometimes right away you do, but I find that, again, the wood kind of dictates itself. You know, wood is different in different areas, so sometimes you will get some splotches, especially around a lot of like the curly figured wood. You could get splotches there, but but it kind of is what it is. It's a natural process. So if you're looking for perfection, I think the third way to ebonize wood will answer those questions.
And then once you're done ebonizing, how do you finish it?
Well, I would finish it just like I would a piece that I haven't ebonized. I enjoy using walnut oil with a microcrystalline wax from Doctor's Wood Shop. And again, I just put a couple coats of that on, I let it dry, buff it off, and that seems to do a pretty darn good job of making it fingerprint proof and being able to be picked up and used quite a bit. And again, you can even use this on utility bowls, like a salad bowl. And again, just walnut oil finish on it will work great, and it will. I think it looks really nice when you use that finish. But again, if you wanted to use, boiled linseed oil or just a wipe on poly, all of that is definitely able to be used.
So that bowl is a good example of how different parts of the wood take the tannin differently.
Absolutely.
Or take the
take
solution
the iron
different.
acetate differently. Yeah.
Very nice.
Thanks. So the third way to ebonize wood is actually my favorite. It's my preferred way of doing it. That's not to say that I haven't done the fire and the iron acetate many times, and there are places for that. But if you want just kind of a no-brainer, carefree, way less messy, way more predictable, working on any species of wood, I find that India ink, especially the Speedball, I think it's called Speedball Super Black India ink, works fantastic. I bought this at Blick. There's a link in the document that I will put online on our website to link to where you can purchase that at Blick's. And I find that the 32 ounce is a little bit more value. You can buy a 2 ounce India ink container or a 16 ounce, but I found the 32 ounce is just way more value for the money. Let's see, and it'll pretty much last forever. I think I've used about this much in a year. So the application is super easy. You just pour a little into a cup, and that's enough to do 5 bowls. And then you either use a chip brush or a sponge brush, and this is just a piece of sycamore, and you just brush it on. And it is, it's a shellac base, so you can thin it with alcohol if you want more of just a wash. And then it dries super quick, 5 minutes maybe. And then if it's not black enough for you, go back over it again, and it will allow the grain to show through a bit, at least the texture of it, once it's dried. And yeah. Oh, the other thing is wear gloves. Do as I say, not as I do, unless you want black thumbs. And here are some examples of what you can achieve. Again, I've kind of embellished this with some wood carving, but this is the cherry color natural with a little walnut oil on it. And this, again, is just one coat of the Super Black Speedball India ink. This is another piece. I've actually buffed this one a little bit more. After I've put the Speedball on and let it dry, I've usually just put walnut oil on it over the top of it. But again, this one I buffed out a little bit more. I believe I put both Tripoli and then the white diamond on it. And yeah, so that's kind of the color of the wood before, and then again ebonized to a solid black. And you can still see the grain patterns in it, which is what I what I really like. Here's another one that's a little different embellishment on it. And again, the color of the wood before ebonizing, and then just a real nice clean black ebonization of this wood. And again, I believe this is cherry. And yeah, I'm just super happy with the way it turns out. Again, a lot less messy as long as you wear gloves and don't spill it. Pretty cost effective. It's pretty cheap to use. It lasts forever. And that's pretty much it. Again, I can put a wax on it and buff it out, or I can just leave it with a spray lacquer on it, either matte or semi-gloss, and possibly even gloss. That's, I think, what I put on here as a matte or semi-gloss. And the other thing you can do, which I just found this, if you go through the whole beetle buffing system from the Triple E, the White Diamond, and then the carnauba wax, it makes it almost like a piano finish. It really does look like a polished ebony. This is just a little bud vase that I carved and then ebonized. So, and then this is almost dry, and you can see a bit of the grain through it. If I would probably go over this maybe one more time, or possibly just burnish it with a paper towel to see how flat it gets. And then if I'm not happy with it, again, I'll just put another coat on and wait for it to dry and do it again. So that is how you ebonize.
So Bill, what advice do you have for people who want to get started in fuming or bleaching or ebonizing?
Well, I would say just jump in, just do it. It's pretty low cost of entry, and it's fun. It's just again, I would say if you have a beautiful piece that you're proud of, if you've never ebonized or bleached or fumed before, don't try it on that first. Try it on another piece that you're that's a little less likely to end up pride of place on your mantle. Just a piece of scrap wood, or again, like if a piece is blown up off of your lathe, and instead of throwing it away, just try to bleach it, or try to ebonize it, or try to fume it, and see what happens. And I just think every time you do it, you learn something more about the process. It's fun.
And do you know that what you're going to do to a piece before you start, or you do a piece and then you look at it and decide?
Both. Sometimes I have in my mind I have some pieces, and I would really love to try to experiment with fuming them and seeing what they'll look like. And I will do one, and if the fuming, I'm not happy with it, then I won't continue to keep fuming those pieces. I'll just think about it another way to do it, or I'll leave them plain if that's what they need. And again, you can plan on doing something, but sometimes the wood will kind of tell you what it wants it to be. Yeah, sometimes I'll think, yeah, I'm going to mix up some bleaching solution, and I'm going to just bleach the crap out of a bunch of stuff. I made a bunch of like weed pots, and I decided I was going to bleach all of them. They were different species. They were just in offcuts of different species, and I just wanted to see what bleaching would do to each one of them. And quite honestly, I learn a lot every time I do it. It gives me more confidence in what I do in the shop, and it's fun. It's just it's fun to play.
And what do you think you've learned after doing this for a couple of years?
What I have learned is it's fun. It's satisfying. It's always interesting. It's like when you take a piece of wood and you turn it on a lathe, and you're surprised at what it came out to be. You can kind of keep adding to that by trying to fume it or ebonize it or ebonize part of it before you carve out the middle of it. It's just, the piece is, when it's finished, I find that I usually am really proud of it. I'm really excited and happy that I actually went out on a limb and tried to do something even more than just turning the form.
Well, your pieces are pretty spectacular. Thank you very much, and I think we'll all enjoy this today.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for watching, everyone.